Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to do a reading on boundaries. And this little beauty, this nature element has inspired this reading. It is a rose, or it's from a rose bush. So clearly there aren't roses yet. At the time I'm recording this, it's spring in Minnesota. But it has inspired the reading because look at these cutie pies. These are budding thorns. And they're flexible. They're just little baby ones that don't even poke yet. And when I saw them, I thought they were so cute. First, they're like this bright pink color. But what came to me immediately was budding boundaries. Like budding, like a budding flower, but it's like budding boundaries. Like this is budding its boundaries before it buds as a flower. And I thought there was something really like noteworthy about that to explore. You know, all of us, I think, are on a journey with boundaries, whether we haven't considered them at all and we're just like on this unconscious, or maybe that's not a journey then, but we're like unconsciously, having boundaries or not having boundaries, having healthy boundaries or not having healthy boundaries, or probably if you're someone tuning into this reading, you're on a healing journey and a lot of that is being on a journey with boundaries, right? And there's a lot of, I think, iterations to the boundary journey. And there's a lot to work through. You know what I mean? I saw something on Instagram recently, and my apologies, I don't know who to give this credit to at this moment, but it was probably from like a therapist or something. And she said, I think it was a woman, regardless, she said, boundary work is grief work. Isn't that interesting? And I think that's just like, it hit me so hard, and it hit me with such truth, because that has been my experience on the healing journey, is that boundary work is a huge part of the healing journey. And it is at the root of it, there's so much grief initially. Because what is boundary work except for determining a line, and that's part of the reason I felt like this nature element wanted to be in this configuration, not only so you can see these beautiful leaves and the budding boundaries, the the budding thorns, but also because like there is lines with boundaries, right? There's like lines you've decided not to cross. There's lines that you are unwilling to allow other people to cross. But then there's also like this idea of self. Like there's lines where you start to define yourself. Like this is me and that is you. And this is important to me, and so on and so forth. And as we do that more and more, we witness how people react to that, right? And a lot of times the reaction isn't good initially, because we've created dynamics with people based on foggy lines of self, based on no lines, enmeshment, right? Based on unclear understandings of who we are. And so then we have to deal with how people react. And so there's just a certain amount of discomfort always in the boundary setting process, especially when when you're at the budding stage of your boundary journey, right? And sometimes that discomfort is just deep level grief, like people who are really important to you not understanding or not respecting who you are. So I want to just like start by taking a breath. I'm saying all that hopefully not to scare you, but hopefully to meet you where you're at, because I'm sensing if you're somebody who this reading is for, again, I feel like you are on the healing journey, you're on this boundaries journey, and you probably have experienced a lot of this already, a lot of the discomfort and a lot of the grief. So I want to get messages for you today about your boundary journey, anything that might be helpful. And I think I just want you to also know you're not alone. You're not alone in this. It can be so confusing and so uncomfortable and so heartbreaking at times, it also eventually is some of the most rewarding work ever, because you become someone who understands how to respect yourself, who understands more and more who yourself is, and then therefore you understand how to respect others, right? And protecting yourself from harm and protecting your own joy become this major practice in your life that then equals more joy and more peace. And so I just think on my healing journey, once again, boundary work has been some of the hardest work that I've done, and it has been the most rewarding. And so I'm hoping today to just unearth whatever would be most helpful for you to hear in order to help with your more and more budding boundaries. So to start that, I pulled these two cards from the Green Witch Oracle deck. I did not pull them quote unquote randomly. I pulled them intentionally because when I was thinking about this reading, I kept thinking about the hedge card from this deck, which, as you can see here, says potential boundaries and indecision. And then as I was like prepping the deck, looking, shuffling and then looking for this hedge card, this hearth card came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, because that is essentially almost like the reward, so to speak, from boundaries, which is safety and comfort and spiritual connection. You're creating that hearth. So we're going to start by reading hedge and hearth, just to kind of set the tone. And then I'm going to pull from the Smith-Waite deck. Basically whatever wants to come out, we'll see. I usually plan on like 3 or 4 cards. As I say that, okay, so I don't usually do this, but I'm getting the sense that I'm going to actually try to pull 4 cards. The first card is going to represent the energy, the outward energy that it's going to be really important for you to set boundaries with. I don't usually do that. I know a lot of tarot readers read cards like, oh, this is an external energy. I that's just not typically how I do read cards. But for some reason, well, probably because of the theme of this reading, which is boundaries, which is inevitably going to be having to differentiate between this is external and this is internal. This is myself and this is somebody else. So for that reason, I am going to do that. I'm going to pull 1 card. The first card is going to be the energy right now that would be very important for you to set boundaries with. And then I'll plan on pulling 3 cards after that, and that'll be more like advice from spirit with where you're at on your budding boundary journey. Okay, let's read about hedge first. It says, potential boundaries and indecision. Card meaning, the hedge or natural boundary serves 2 purposes: to define a safety zone, protecting you from what's outside, or to keep you in one place like a pen. The hedge card asks you to review your own boundaries and how you respond to boundaries created by others. A hedge is also a symbol of moving between 2 states of being or 2 worlds. Riding the hedge is a phrase used to describe spirit journeys where a witch's awareness travels to acquire information and undertake new experiences. The hedge belongs to neither world, being the liminal space between the 2. If you are in that liminal space, it's time to choose which side to step into. If you are in that liminal space, it's time to choose which side to step into for now. You can't stay there forever. So isn't that interesting? It's kind of like that line, conversation we had before of like, boundaries are lines you have to decide to cross or not. A lot of us, who may have more like people-pleasing tendencies, like myself, we often think we can kind of like toe the line, right, with niceness and things of that nature. But the reality is like there's a cost to towing the line, right? And so I think the more we can actually make choices and decide on one side or the other, there is such powerful energy in that. So finally, this hedge card says, in terms of a reflection question to ask yourself, it says, do you need to be firmer about how you allow others to impact you? Or are your boundaries so strong that you push people away? Well, and that's an interesting thing to note too. I am assuming, because this is like a budding boundary conversation. These are new baby flexible boundaries right now, these thorns. I'm assuming that, and because of the collective I seem to be reading for, who seems to have somewhat of a similar essence and journey as I have had, which is it's likely your boundaries, what you're healing is porous boundaries, not too rigid boundaries. However, I do think sometimes, so that may or may not be true for you. First and foremost, decide whether it resonates. Or is it that more and more you need to kind of relax your boundaries a little bit? Or is it more and more you need to kind of fill the gaps and make your boundaries a bit stronger? I do think, though, a lot of times when we have porous boundaries, sometimes we can like flip a switch really fast and become super rigid because we get like suddenly overwhelmed, or suddenly we've had too much. And so I think there is like the more we can have healthy, strong boundaries that are unique to us, to our self energy, the less we run the risk of doing that like super porous, super rigid thing. And so I think kind of regardless, it's just I guess maybe that reflection question can be like an overall general question, like, do you need to have stronger boundaries or less rigid boundaries? But I also think like moment to moment, you might notice you, like I said, flipping back and forth. And so I think in general, this can just be a discussion about healthier boundaries for you. And then let's read about this beautiful hearth card, because as I mentioned before, that's sort of, in my mind, the quote unquote reward for healthy boundaries is we create this safe, comfortable, inviting, beautiful, connected space for ourselves. So the hearth card says, the hearth is the spiritual heart of your home, symbolizing the presence of spirit. A physical hearth provides light, warmth, and a way to prepare nourishment. The spiritual hearth represents the spiritual nature of the home and the essence of what makes it a place of rest, rejuvenation, and comfort. The location of the spiritual heart is unimportant, as is whatever you might use or recognize as its physical representation. It may be a feeling, a meditation, a blanket. Hearth also symbolizes connection with those you consider family as well as spirit. This card suggests that you look to those relationships and do what is necessary to reinforce them. Renew your connection to your hearth to keep the communication with spirit in your home vibrant. Reflection. In what way does your connection to spirit need attention? So beautiful. Okay, so now let's get some information from spirit about this idea of boundaries. And once again, we'll start with this first card. What energy is it really important that the viewer sets boundaries with at the time they find this video? Oh, that's very interesting. That's Ten of Pentacles in reverse. Okay, so I'll explain that in a moment, what's coming through. Okay, so now this is advice from spirit. Oh, wow. Okay, wow. That came out fast, didn't it? All right. This is quite the story coming through. I'm excited to, I don't know if excited, well, yeah, I am excited to give you, I was gonna say I don't know if excited because, you know, boundaries are not like necessarily an exciting, easy topic, but I am excited because I think there's some powerful information here. So let's talk about what came out here in the advice realm. So this first card, the Ten of Pentacles in reverse, that represents the energy that spirit is advising that you set strong, healthy boundaries with at this time. And the Ten of Pentacles in reverse is to me, it often represents like out of integrity. Okay. Ten of Pentacles upright is this like beautiful card of generational richness and health. And the way that I view it is because things have been built on integrity. Okay. So when I see this in reverse and it's advice from spirit in terms of what energy to set boundaries with, I think it's anybody who is either who you know is out of integrity in what they're doing. So they claim to have a certain set of values, but their behavior and actions are not aligning with those values. That would be a red flag to pay attention to, and that would be definitely a person you would want to look at your boundary, the boundaries you have. Definitely a person you would like. You probably need to set stronger, healthier boundaries with. The other essence I'm getting with this card is people who are out of integrity, out of alignment with your values. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong, but when you notice there's a discrepancy between what you value, the values and visions you have for your life, and people are showing you or telling you they have different values and visions, that doesn't necessarily make them wrong, but you might want to think about setting stronger boundaries with a person or people like this, simply because I think that's the essence of boundaries, right? It's you're not trying to change another person, but you're being clear about who you are and what you're wanting to protect in your life. And maybe that is something that needs to be said when it comes to boundaries is you're not trying to determine what is right and wrong for another person. Again, you're not trying to change other people. With boundaries, you are simply trying to decide what is right for you and protect your peace, your joy, and to protect yourself from harm. And so, again, when I say that there's somebody, Spirit is not only advising that you set boundaries with people who are clearly out of integrity with what they claim to value, but also people who are out of integrity with what you value. It doesn't mean you have to judge them, and it certainly doesn't mean you do this in a punitive manner where, again, you're taking an action, calling it a quote-unquote boundary, trying to change them. That's not a boundary that I've had to learn this too. That is not a boundary. That's just passive aggressiveness, right? True boundaries are simply just like, okay, I'm getting to know myself, self energy, and I am protecting myself. That doesn't just mean protecting myself from harm, but that also means protecting my peace, protecting the visions that I hold dear, protecting the values that I hold dear, protecting my joy. And then in terms of these other three cards as advice, boundary advice from Spirit, in all reality, they're pretty straightforward in terms of the story. They're giving me a very cohesive story, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the first card here we have is the Three of Swords. And I think this is speaking to what we were talking about in the past, just a few minutes ago in this reading, which is part of boundary work is grief work. Not all of boundary work is that. Part of it is self-discovery, and part of it is clear communication, and part of it is just like mild discomfort. But there are parts that are truly deeply heartbreaking. And I think in terms of advice from Spirit, from this card I'm getting two things. And one is to do your best to move towards that heartbreak, which is like so hard, right? But I guess instead of trying to avoid it, to lean into it because it's part of the process. And that's the second thing I'm getting from this card is just like validation that you're not doing anything wrong for this heartbreak being present. No one can avoid that, avoid the essence of this card in the healing process, and specifically in the boundary journey. And so I just feel like part of this is advice and part of this is just validation that you're doing this right, not wrong when you feel this. And paradoxically, when you are feeling this, there's a lot of health in it, because instead of, again, keeping that grief at an arm's length away, you're willing to process it, feel it, let it run through you, so that, again, you're not doing more passive aggressive things or avoidant things to just avoid feeling this heartbreak. And so I think there's definitely a call here. I just think it's interesting that I mentioned that grief part at the beginning, that's something I see on Instagram today. And then this card shows up as essentially advice from Spirit. So I think it's just like a nod to that validation of the truth in that statement. And then this beautiful card here at the center of kind of this three-card spread of advice is the star. And I just love it so much because the star, you know what? There's some nudity in this, so I don't know if I'm going to get censored, but I'll just do that for now. So the star is like this beautiful card of healing, but it's also, it's like healing while moving towards wish fulfillment. So there's like two things that are coming through to me. And one is, as you are more clear on your visions and values and you baby step by baby step walk that path, that is very healing for you. And as you more and more are healing, you are going to unlock your wish fulfillment. And so there's something here about like, don't give up on what your visions and values. And I think it relates directly to this Ten of Pentacles in reverse. Like if anybody is asking you to change those just so they're more comfortable, like that's a real red flag. That's a real problem. Okay, there's something very healing and very important that you are defining more and more clearly and moving towards more and more your visions and values, and you're altering them and you're molding them, and you are understanding you have the right to have strong visions and values that are innate to you, that are unique to you, and that's very important. I'm just going to flip this now. Because I don't want to get censored because of nudity. And then the final advice from Spirit is a Four of Pentacles. And so the way I'm reading this card today in this reading is, it's a, like, Four of Pentacles aspected negatively can be like you're just kind of like gripping to your money. But it's definitely not the essence I'm getting from it in this reading, because, well, it's positively aspected because it's advice from Spirit. And so there's something here about just like getting a solid grasp on your money, on kind of just like the tangible nitty gritty aspects of being human, how you're getting your needs met, just like getting a solid grasp on that, like looking at all that, making some tweaks so that the foundation of that part of your life is strong. Foundation comes from the four. Four energy to me is often like there's something with foundational. So there's just like something here. And I'm definitely not getting it as like a warning, like, oh, be scared because your money is going to be bad or anything like that. That's not the essence I'm getting from it at all. It just has a very grounding essence, and just like kind of get your look your money, look the tangible nitty gritty aspects of being human, like look them square in the eye, make changes, just make sure you've got like a solid footing, because I think with that, it's easier for you to have, to take stances for your visions and values, right? It's harder to take stances for our visions and values when we're worried about in some way, shape, or form getting our physical needs met. But when we have a more and more solid relationship with money, with time, with labor, and we feel, baby step by baby step, healthier and healthier with how we're getting our physical needs met, then it's easier for us to stand up to people who, and I'm getting the sense here, it could even be people of like notoriety or wealth, that you'll have to decide whether or not that resonates. But this Ten of Pentacles, it could be maybe people who have pentacles or have notoriety, but maybe there's like, again, there's some sort of discrepancy between what they say they value and how they actually behave. And so then with that being said, it makes sense that Spirit would just advise that you feel, I'm almost getting the sense you're already solidly footed. Is that a word? Hopefully you understand what I mean. But you just make sure you feel sure-footed in this area, because as you more and more feel sure-footed and solid in this area, it's easier for you to baby step by baby step to set these boundaries. And I think that applies whether or not it resonated that maybe you're setting boundaries with people of wealth or notoriety. I think regardless, there is something here about just like you acknowledging and feeling how solid you are in this arena. Because I think even if you like feel unstable in the arena of like time, money, or labor, I feel like the more you look at it, the more you're going to realize like, no, I think I'm okay here. Or you'll figure out how to be okay. So the more you're just like, okay, as I give myself permission to be strong and sure-footed in this area, then more and more I have the base and the foundation to set these boundaries in healthier and healthier ways. And there's something, I guess, now that I'm saying this, with the Four of Pentacles coming through with like simplicity, which I'm not sure I've ever gotten that essence from this card, but it's definitely coming through. Like, and I've never really noticed this before, but isn't there like simplicity to this imagery? Like there's just like two pentacles, they're lined up, you know what I mean? So there's something about maybe more you'll feel more sure-footed the more you can simplify in it could be your possessions, in your flow of life, and your systems and processes, just like how you, again, get your physical needs met, all the things that are involved in that. I think the more you're able to simplify, that's going to help you feel that groundedness, so that you feel you can more and more identify people who might be out of integrity with themselves or with the visions and values you have for your life, and you feel you can set the strong, healthy boundaries you need to protect your hearth, your home, your safety, your comfort, your spiritual connection, your sense of self.